that we're going to make personal finance personal. A budget is a plan. We wanted to knock out this loan in a year's time. Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of my podcast, I guess. We're going to be covering personal finance on this channel. I am Kyle Townsend, and a little bit about me. So first of all, this channel is not meant to be a channel that is going to compete with some of those big finance channels out there that are going to be talking about lots of different numbers and looking at the best way to handle every single situation. Obviously, the people who do that kind of stuff are very smart. They know a lot about money and they have a lot of great information to share with you. But the thing that I find that is not quite as great about those types of channels is that they can feel a little not personal for something that's supposed to be personal, right? Personal finance should feel personal. So while I may not be able to give always the greatest advice out there, and I'm still learning things myself, I felt that there needed to be more channels out there of people sharing their own personal finances and their own personal financial journeys, and that maybe that can be an encouragement to you. There's a lot of people out there that don't budget. There's a lot of people out there that live paycheck to paycheck. So I feel like if there are more personal, relatable channels out there sharing information of how they're handling finances in today's world, that might help a lot more people out than just throwing up the chalkboard and talking hypotheticals all the time. So that is kind of the heart of this channel. If you were to ask me, like, what makes this channel unique, it's going to be that we're going to make personal finance personal. We're not going to use hypotheticals. We're not just going to make up math problems for us to solve, because we know that life is messy and that there are interruptions, and we can make things look amazing on a chalkboard, but we know that real life comes along and messes those things up. So my goal is to kind of just carry on with my journey here, and you can come along with me. You can even share your own viewpoints in the comments. I'm sure there are some things that you may know that I don't know that could really help me in my own personal financial journey. So also a little bit more information about me so you can kind of get to know me a little bit. I am a elementary school teacher. I teach fifth graders, and I have 2 kids of my own and a wife, and my kids are 3 and 1 year old. So very much in the chasing toddlers all over the place and trying to keep them from getting into everything sort of phase. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that. Not this particular episode, but we'll probably get into kids and the cost of them and all that kind of stuff and the pros and cons and all that. So lots to talk about, not a whole lot of time to do it. But that's why we have these podcasts in the first place, right? We could just keep on going and adding more episodes to it. So again, just to recap, this is a personal finance channel that is focused on, well, my personal finances. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and transition to the November budget that my wife and I had created. In every month that we go into, we create a monthly budget, the 2 of us. And actually, my wife has a channel that she has, much bigger than mine, obviously. And we go together and build the budget while recording it, just to kind of encourage people to budget and show that budgeting doesn't have to be that scary. So I will put a link to that in this video so that you can go and look at that if you want to see greater details in the process that we go through in creating our budget. This video is going to be a lot more condensed, I would say. I'm not going to necessarily go through every reasoning for every line item in our budget. So one thing I want to let you know before I get started is that we keep our income private. There are some things that we do not share on the internet. One of them is our exact location, obviously, and another one is our income. And it's mostly because we don't have to share everything on the internet, and we do like to retain some privacy. So while this is a channel about my personal finances, there are certain lines that my wife and I are not willing to cross. And so that'll be one of them. So I won't be able to share with you our income, but I can share with you all of our expenses. And I can also share with you before we get into this that every month we always try to leave extra money at the end of the month to cover any unforeseen things in our line items that maybe we went over in. And that can be anywhere from $50 to $200. Just depends on the month and the number of expenses that we have. But we always try to leave a little bit of money left over so that we can cover that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into November's budget. So the first thing is the category for housing. In housing, we have a mortgage of $781.60. When we first got into this house, which is about 5 years ago, it was about $718 a month. That does include an escrow, so that includes insurance and taxes. So over that period of time, the mortgage has gone up. So if you haven't bought a house yet, keep that in mind, that the number that you commit to at the beginning is not necessarily going to always stay that number. As property taxes increase, or as insurance companies adjust their premiums, your mortgage will likely go up. So in the span of 5 years, our mortgage has roughly gone up about $60. So just keep that in mind. Now, you might be thinking, how in the world would you get it so cheap? Maybe we can talk about that in a future episode, but one thing that we did was we bought a fixer-upper. We bought probably one of the roughest houses on the street, and they were willing to get rid of it quickly. I mean, it literally had a hole in the roof, and there was like a little indoor water feature. Not really. A water feature we wanted to repair immediately. So things like that did get us the house on the cheap. Water bill for this month is going to be $149 or so. And there's a whole story to that. Again, you can watch the budgeting videos that my wife has on her channel where we do go into some detail about that. But just a quick summary. The local township did not manage their water lines very well. And so the state came down and started demanding that they needed to make the updates. And so they spent a ton of money to do that and passed off the whole bill onto all of the residents. So our water bill, if we use no water whatsoever, is still going to be $100 a month, just for the privilege of being hooked up to the water lines in our village here. So unfortunate, we're only really spending about anywhere from $30 to $50 in water every month, but we're spending $130 to $150 every single month. Internet, we use Frontier, and we spend about $40 a month for that. Electricity and gas, this particular month, it's going to be about $168. Trash, we do trash every 3 months, and it happens to be this month is our trash bill. So we're going to be spending about $75. So if you break it down, it's about $25 a month. Phone bill is $50 a month. My wife and I are the only ones with phones. Obviously, my toddlers do not have phones. Moving along into transportation, we're budgeting about $180 in gas. My workplace isn't too far away, so we're not exactly driving a ton of mileage every single day for gas. So we usually come in under $180. For food, we're budgeting $400 for groceries, and maybe I could have my wife come on at some point and talk about how we keep under that grocery line item there, because $400 for a lot of people is surprising. but we make it work. Restaurants, $50 for this month. I will say we don't always stay in budget on that one, and we do usually have to cover some extra expenses there. And then for Thanksgiving food, these are going to be the sides that we bring to the different parties that we're going to be attending, and we're budgeting about $25 this month for that. Going to the personal category, we do something that's called pocket money. It's essentially a line item that allows my wife and I to spend money however we feel. So our individual pocket monies are $30 each. So my wife, Alora, her pocket money is $30, and then mine is $30 as well. So basically, we can spend $30 for the month and have no justification whatsoever for it. Toiletries and cleaning. So this is anything to do with the bathroom, essentially. So the different chemicals for cleaning stuff, toilet paper, toothbrushes and toothpaste, all those different things. So we're budgeting $30 this month for that. Both of my kids have a 529. We only put about $30 each into those. So since we have 2 kids, that's $60 in a month. And we can talk about 529s in greater detail in the future, but that's something that we do. We've been doing it since they were born. Diapers and wipes, we're only planning to spend $30 this month. That does go up though. Sometimes it's $75 or $60 in a month, but this particular month we're only doing $30. We do have a miscellaneous category, usually when we can't fit a certain item in, but this year we don't foresee anything for that, so we're putting $0 there. And then homeschooling, my son, Caspian, he's the 3-year-old, and the two, the 3 and 1 year old that I was mentioning before. He's been starting up a little bit of homeschooling stuff, and so we've been budgeting some money to buy different things, paper and glue and stuff like that for that. Christmas, this is for Christmas decorations that my wife wants to buy. We slowly buy decorations over the years, and so my wife's wanting to spend a little bit more money this year to do that. Pet care, and this is for our dog. We have a chocolate Labrador, and we're going to spend roughly about $14 for dog food. Usually that's the main item, is just $14. There could be on occasion different bills, but that's the main one. Health, we have a line item for medicine and vitamins. We have $0 there for this month because all vitamins are covered. We don't need to buy any more of that. Auto insurance. So we're spending about $146 to cover 2 different vehicles, a Nissan Sentra and a Chevy Impala. And so we spend about $146 a month for that. And then the one debt that we have is my student loan debt. Well, okay, I need to go back. We do have the mortgage, obviously the house debt. But the other debt that we have besides the house debt is my student loan for my bachelor's degree in education. So that is about $161 a month. And right now, the balance on that is about $13,100. So going up to the savings category. In the savings category, we have an emergency fund, and that is $1,000 right now. And we are going to put $0 into that for right now because the emergency fund does not need to be replenished. It's just going to stay at $1,000, so no need to add funds to that. I have a student loan debt savings fund. This is mostly just a tracker for me because I'm making extra payments on my student loan debt. So in addition to the $161, I am also paying $200 more. So about $361 total every month. And I've been doing that for a few months now, and I've spent about $1,000 extra dollars so far. And then we have a Christmas presents saving category, and we've been saving about $30 a month to spend for our kids for Christmas presents. We started that in October. We're doing it again in November, and then we're going to do it a third time in December. So a total of about $90 is going to be spent between the two of them, so about $45 each. We figured they're still very young, so they don't need necessarily a ton of Christmas presents, and they don't necessarily need incredibly expensive ones yet. They also have 2 sets of grandparents who are going to give them a ton of Christmas presents. So there's really no need, in our opinion, to add a ton of money to that, at least not yet. Obviously, when they get older, that will likely change. And then the last category to talk about is giving. My wife and I do tithe about 10% of our income to the church that we attend. And that pretty much sums up all of the line items in our November budget. And like I said, we do have some leftover money in the budget to cover any situations where we go maybe a tad bit over in some of our categories. Because remember, a budget is a plan. It is not something that you are going to be perfect on every single time. You are planning out what you think you're going to spend for that month. And then obviously, as you get to the end of the month, you'll look back and see how you did. You may go over in a line item, and then you may go under in a different one. That's fine. The point, though, is to have a goal set in mind instead of just living day to day, week to week without a plan. If you have a plan, you are more likely to be successful. The last thing is that my wife and I, we use a budgeting app called EveryDollar because we follow, not necessarily completely to a T, but we do follow a lot of Dave Ramsey's advice on the internet. And so we use the app that they have provided through Dave Ramsey Solutions. It is free, so if that's something that you want to look into, you can do that. I know a lot of banks also have apps, and they will have their own personal finance budgeting app attached to it. So you're welcome to probably use that as well. I know our bank does that, but we prefer to use the EveryDollar instead of that one. So yeah, those are some things to look into. If you haven't budgeted before, I highly recommend doing it. It does not really take a long time to do, especially if you use the EveryDollar app. Because if you use that, it saves over the stuff that you had before, and you can just bring it over to the next month, make the adjustments you need to make, and then move on. It would seriously take you like 10 minutes or less to do. Now, my wife and I on camera, it often takes us 15 minutes or longer to do, but that is because we are elaborating on our finances for people who are not in the know. If we were doing it without a camera in front of us, I'm pretty confident it would take us 10 minutes or less. Budgeting does not have to be an hour to 2 hour long conference. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a lot shorter. So I highly encourage you to find an app or find some budgeting tool out there. There's tons of them for free, and try it out. And if you're not super successful the first time, well then try again. Make adjustments. Be reasonable with your line items, which I'll probably talk about that in a later video as well. How can we better budget our money? Okay, with that said, I want to move into my last segment for today. So we talked about the purpose of the channel. We talked about my wife and I's November budget. The last thing I want to touch on before I end this video is talk about the debt journey that my wife and I are on. When we first got married, we had about the same amount of debt that many other Americans, I would say, have. We had 2 car loans. We had my student loan debt. We did not have a house yet, so we didn't have the mortgage debt, but we were planning to eventually get to that point. So we had a lot of the consumer debts out there that you would likely have. And over time, as we moved along, we were renting first. We were saving money. We really weren't budgeting. I was kind of just looking at the bank app that we had and seeing what our current bank balance was and just trying to strive to be ending the month with a higher number than what we started the month with. Not necessarily a budget, right? And then my wife wasn't involved in finances at all. I would just tell her, hey, we spent a lot of money the last couple of weeks. We should probably, cut that back a little bit. But saying, hey, we should cut that back a little bit is not necessarily giving somebody a good number or goal to go by. So she would think that, oh, we're at basically $0. We need to, live on beans and rice or skip meals or something. She would go to the worst possible scenario. So thankfully, over time, we got better on being on the same page when it came to finances. She started getting involved. I started sharing more information with her. And we started going to these free classes that our church was putting on about Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps. And that really enlightened us and got us both on the same page and really started to push us to have a desire to start cutting down on our debts. Some of the debts we got rid of were not even on purpose, I would say, like our 2 car loan debts. We actually got rid of those because at the time we were leaving our rental situation and we were looking for a place to go to. And it was during that time when, interest rates were 3%, 2%. People were buying houses left and right. So we thought it was a good time to buy because we could get a lot more money for a mortgage at that time. And we were looking, and the bank said, hey, if you really want to ensure that you can secure a loan with us, we recommend paying off your 2 cars. And I had been saving money before I got married. I'd been saving a ton of money and just throwing it in a savings account. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I had about $9,000, $10,000 saved up. And our 2 car loans were very cheap. I mean, I bought a 2011 Impala for like $6,000, put it on a loan. So, and my wife had been aggressively paying off her car before we even got married. So when we came together, she had like a $5,000 loan. So I was able to pay off both cars in one fell swoop with basically all the savings that I had. So that was not really on purpose. That was just the bank saying, hey, you should do that. And so we thought, okay, let's do that because that's what the bank wants us to do. So it's kind of funny how budgeting, when you're thinking about debt, it could be something that you really don't think is a big deal, and in many cases is necessary. But after paying off those 2 cars and not having a car loan after that, it really felt very freeing. And I remember telling my wife, I'm not sure I want to go back to having a car loan again. I think I would rather just have no car loan from this point forward. And so after that, trying to stay on story here, we got the mortgage, and then we had some other debts go along because then we had kids, and of course that's not cheap, having those hospital bills. And we eventually got those paid off too. And now, bringing it up to speed to today, my wife and I are trying to pay off the last big, more consumerish type loan, and that is my student loan. And it was about $22,000, $21,000, and we just paid $8,000 on it recently to knock it down to about $13,000, like I mentioned previously in the budgeting segment of this episode. So I'll link a video that's on my wife's channel that talks about our debt journey, and we talked about in that video how we wanted to knock out this loan in a year's time. We're probably about halfway through since we posted that video. It was in May of this year when we posted it. And we've knocked about half, getting close to about half of the loan off. And we're thinking with the tax return that we receive and some of these extra payments we're making and some other things that we'll be able to knock out that loan. So I will, keep you updated on that throughout the rest of these podcast videos. And, just let you know how that's going. So far, we're at about $13,000. And we're hoping to, like I said, be completely debt-free besides the mortgage by May of 2026. fingers crossed that we'll actually get there. And I think that's where we're going to probably stop this episode for today. And I'm hoping to have many more. I'm going to try to do this once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. It really just depends how much time I'm able to get. We have a very small house, so it's hard to find time where the house is quiet and I can just sit down and talk in front of a camera and just say all these things right away. So it may feel like I'm just spilling out a ton of information all at once. I'm sorry about that, but I have a very busy life, so constantly on the run here in the Townsend household. So let me know in the comments down below if you have any thoughts about debt, or if you have any thoughts about the November budget that I shared, or any ideas on future content that I should post. I would love to hear that as well. Anyway, thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you on the next one.